Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
We may not be Melbourne, let alone livable, but we are Apple Slice, the most listenable tech podcast down under. In episode 10, join myself, Simon, along with Nick, as we trip on tablet talk of not one, not two, but 3 new iPads for 2017. Plus, we get an inside look at the mind of Tim Cook, while Apple makes sure Olympians won't go away empty-handed. Get all of this and more hand-picked highlights in a fresh and fruity Apple Slice. Well, hello everyone. We've hit another episode 10. It's a milestone of sorts. So this is, as we do this fortnightly, this is technically 5 months for us, so it's pretty good. Happy with how the progress has been going, and gaining new followers and that sort of thing. So definitely spread the word if you have friends that are either listen to tech podcasts or just into Apple, especially, and follow the news, want to hear some opinions and that type of thing. Yeah, definitely get them into it. So before we address the different things that have been happening in Apple lately, a few things in Australia. The census. I think I don't need to say any more about that.
Did you do it on census night?
I did it the night before, so I actually got in. Yeah, it was no problem for me. So for yourself, did you have to legally do it or not?
Yeah, I did. So basically, I only got my notice quite late in the mail. I think I only got it like the day of the census or the supposed census night. So, but I opened it up obviously much earlier in the day and saw that you could do it before supposed census night. So I just got in before the I guess all the bad stuff happened where the website crashed, and yeah, so I'm all done with that.
I don't really see how it panned out is exactly how I thought it would. I mean, I wasn't really expecting hacking, but that didn't surprise me. I just thought to get everyone to try and tee it up to get everyone in Australia to use a website on the same night, it's going to crash. Yeah. And it was just such an oversight that it was quite laughable. And then did you see that little bit about some uni students, I think, made a census site for under $500 that was more stable than the actual census site? Yeah, just to prove a point. That's pretty funny. And yeah, the Olympics is coming to an end.
I think the closing ceremony is done, so they've officially handed over to Tokyo 2020. Yeah, it was overall pretty good Olympics. I watched quite a bit of it, and South Africa didn't do too badly for where they usually go. Got 2 golds there, I think 6 silvers and 2 bronzes, something like that. And Australia came 10th on the medals table, which was also really, really good.
Yeah, no, it was pretty good. I do feel sorry for the immense amount of pressure that they put on Australian swimmers. I sort of did a post about that, but which is a shame to see, because I could just, Phelps put it in put exactly how I was thinking. He's saying physically you can be you could be in your best physical shape to achieve a world record or something, but if you're not mentally there, or if there's just too much pressure there, it will affect the outcome. And I think that's just what happened after getting off to a good start, and there's just too much pressure after that. So, but yeah, there's some surprise ones, especially recently with the women's pentathlon, which is such a crazy event to me, I reckon. It's 5 completely different sort of areas to, be really good in. So,
I didn't watch that. I only heard about it. It sounded really quite exciting.
Yeah. And lastly, before we get into it, they've just recently released the most livable cities list again. Australia has historically done really well in this, and again, Melbourne got number one spot, the 6th year in a row. For anyone that doesn't really know how they judge this, the most livable cities is based on scoring in different categories. So safety, healthcare, educational resources, infrastructure, and environment. Now, what they're sort of saying from the top 10 that were ranked is they tend to be mid-sized cities in wealthier countries with low population density, which sort of kind of makes sense to me. Obviously, if you have a higher population or a higher crime rate, it's not going to score well. And you had Adelaide came in 5th, tying with Calgary from Canada, Perth at number 6, and Sydney used to be number 7 but dropped out into number 11, unfortunately due to the perceived threat of terrorism. And I'm not sure what happened to Brisbane, but I think last time it was around 18. So
yeah, I reckon the perceived threat of terrorism on the Sunshine Coast would be 0. So at least you'd do pretty well on that.
Yeah, it's but then, you know, other ones such as Hobart and Darwin don't even get on the list, sort of thing. It's I know some people think it's kind of biased or whatever. You know, I kind of take it with a pinch of salt, but yeah, it's always interesting to
it's still see. Pretty cool and impressive. So
yeah. Okay, so we're going to start it off with a new segment called Core Focus. Bit of a pun there. It's purely based on feature interviews and articles with Apple leaders and spokespeople. So the Washington Post, just over a week ago, August 13th, did an interview with Apple CEO Tim Cook. So it was Jenna McGregor from Washington Post. And so I think if anyone who follows news sites or subscribes to notifications may have already read this. So it's a pretty in-depth, long interview, but we're only going to cover some of our favourite quotes and the figures mentioned. So I just want to start it off with the fact that the iPhone is over 2/3 of Apple's revenue. So obviously they put a lot of effort into it, and some analysts think that that's all Apple have, you know, they're kind of clinging onto this iPhone. Which I think, you know, they put a lot of effort into all the different products and services. So it's kind of what analysts say sometimes I think is I don't fully agree with. But so what Tim Cook said was when he asked about the iPhone being over 2/3 of revenue, he said he's not going to, actually, and I'll quote, he said, "I'm not saying we're not going to do anything else. I'm saying this is still an unbelievable product category to be in. So I would not want anybody to think that, their better days are behind us." So basically, you know, he's sort of saying that if analysts or other people are thinking that, you know, the iPhone is the best thing that Apple can bring out, he's just sort of saying that they focus on it so much because he believes in the smartphone category so much. But as I said, as we know and we talk about, there's a whole other bunch of products that they put their efforts into. Now, to follow on from that, in reaction to the analyst statements about Apple peaking, so historically in 2001 and even 2007, analysts didn't really believe in the potential of the iPhone when it was announced. Then again in 2010 and 2011, every time analysts were saying, Apple have peaked. They can't get any bigger. This is the top. It's just downhill from here. And then even when they reached 60 billion in revenue, they again said Apple couldn't grow anymore. Now, my favorite bit of this is Tim Cook points out that last year they reached 230 billion. So if that's not the sound of analysts eating their own words, I don't know what is. Now, Nick, there's a interesting fact about Apple entering the Fortune 100 in a different area?
Yeah, so obviously Apple's historically really known for their great hardware and software generally and the integration, but more recently they've really been focusing on services, which is obviously part of software, but stuff like iCloud, the App Store, Apple Pay, those kind of services. And it's, as I said, it's currently the perception is that the bulk of their money is hardware, and that's true, but if the services were to be split out into its own company, that would actually be a Fortune 100 company, which kind of gives you the idea of the scale of their business. I've kind of been desensitized to really large numbers just listening to their earnings calls. But Tim Cook said, in today's products, we have services, iCloud, App Store, Apple Pay, and the like, which over the last 12 months grew about $4 billion to over $23 billion in sales. Next year, we said it's going to be a Fortune 100 company in size, which is just crazy.
Yeah, I think that's, it's pretty amazing.
So he also, one of the other things that was covered in the interview was just on, so it was, the interview I think was to mark his fifth anniversary being CEO of Apple, and obviously before that Steve Jobs was CEO, and he kind of touched on what it's been like replacing Steve Jobs. And I thought it was interesting that he said, Tim says that Steve Jobs was a heat shield for Apple, so he took all, the glory for the products that they made, like the iPhone and stuff like that, but also equally so the failures and criticisms that were leveled against Apple. And he said that that was one of his biggest realizations when he became CEO, was just how much Steve had done that over the years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think in that part of the interview, another interesting part was when he quoted, "To me, Steve's not replaceable by anyone. He was an original of a species. I never viewed that was my role." I think just when he used the words original of a species, it's kind of like he's really sort of saying that he was not just some other human. He was like like a whole other.
He has always done it well to sort of distance himself from being the next Steve Jobs. He's very much run Apple, the way that he has wanted to from day one, and hence the endless Steve Jobs would have never done that comments, which just irritate the living daylights out of me.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, if he ran it the way that Steve did, or even tried to, there would be a few of those comments. So I like that he kind of goes at it his own way.
Yeah, I remember his first keynote after Steve Jobs, and he wasn't the best or most exciting at presenting then, but he's come a long way. Do you remember that first keynote? He sort of sounded quite monotone and but he's definitely now he's a lot more enjoyable to watch in the keynotes. And I thought another part when they asked him about replacing Steve Jobs is that he said when he became CEO, and so Steve had stepped down from CEO, he thought that Steve would still be around for a long time. And he just sort of assumed that, when his health kind of comes and goes, when his health started going down again, he would just bounce back as he always has. But then he pointed out 6 weeks. It was a 6-week transition between becoming CEO and then Steve Jobs dying. And that's just, I remember it like being, first the announcement, I'm like, oh, Steve stepped down. So what is, and then it was like, next minute, Steve Jobs isn't alive anymore. And I just remember that being so quick, and it all sort of made sense because, people knew about that Steve was unwell, but I don't think they knew to that level. And it was just, it's kind of brought me back to that time when it all happened, at how quick it was. Yeah.
It's definitely had a profound effect on the way that he's been, or that he's run the company, because as you said, he expected Steve to be around for a long time, and he sort of was thrown in the deep end and thought that he would be given a flotation device, and that just never came. So it's been interesting. And he always sort of mentions that and just how important Steve was in just shaping him and basically giving him the torch. So it's always interesting to hear him talk about it.
Yeah. And then the next bit, which I thought was pretty good that he went into, obviously very personal for Tim, is that Gina, the columnist, asked him what made him decide to publicly come out as gay. And he said he'd been receiving notes from younger people who sort of knew or assumed that he was gay from things they'd read online. Now, in these notes, these sort of younger, I guess, teens and stuff, they spoke of being kind of pushed out by their family because of their sexuality and being isolated and depressed and feeling like they couldn't achieve anything or couldn't do anything, which is, quite intense when he starts sort of talking about that. And he said that he felt that by coming out officially, publicly, that he hoped that it could tell those sorts of, those people that were writing to him and those in similar situations that being gay does not limit your ability to do well and to achieve what you want. So, it's some way of him kind of sort of becoming like an inspiration for them, which I thought was pretty touching. So what did you think about that when they asked him?
Yeah, I think it's been a sort of secondary topic if you're really close to follow Apple closely and have for a while. I think you probably would have known before he officially came out that there were at least he won like Out Magazine's most influential or whatever, like a couple of years ago, and then he didn't the following year because they said he wasn't officially actually out. So it's been interesting to follow just how that's been in the media and how his sort of private life is not really well known. Other than that, it's kind of only rumored that he has a long-term partner. Usually when he mentions kids and stuff, it's his nieces and the importance to that they, how important they are and stuff like that. So I think it's a non-issue really, but I think but that's probably because I don't need, someone to hold, like I don't need someone to look up to in that sense. So I think it's very important that he did it. So by a non-issue, I mean, like it just irritates me that that you really even have to classify anymore. That's kind of my own personal view.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I just, I definitely get that. I just think it was, good that he didn't sort of try and dodge the question or anything. He has no problem with it. And that's awesome. Yeah, I just think that he sort of handled, because, I mean, these sorts of interviews, they always try and, you got to wonder whether they try and, like, how much they try and get into a subject they think might be touchy to sort of get a quote out of them. Yeah. And, so I think that he did that really well.
I don't think anyone could really accuse Tim Cook of not having, like, he has like a mega backbone. He's really stands firm on what he believes in. So I'm not surprised that he did that really well. And that kind of leads on to the next one, which was the fight with the FBI and privacy. And, as I said, they really stuck to their guns on that one and what they really believed was best for everyone. And yes, they caught a lot of flack for, being perceived to be helping terrorists and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think they've been shown to be, what they've done was correct in hindsight. Now, if you look at the Microsoft Surface has a universal key that they have there. I don't know if you caught that story, but basically that universal key was put out on all of their machines, like it was used in testing, and that key was actually left in the code. So essentially you can go and find the universal key that will unlock any Surface. So I think looking back, they definitely knew what they were talking about when they said, you can't keep it safe from anyone, even the people that build it. You never know what they're going to do. So one of the things they liked that he actually said about that was that he said he got in a lot of people, and Craig Federighi, the head of Apple's software, was very influential in actually helping steer the decision. I mean, I don't think it was always a no, we're not going to do it. I think it was we have to really assess this and get the best people to guide us, because, I'm sure that they don't want to help terrorists and stuff like that. So if there was a middle ground that worked for everyone, I think they would have taken it. But the quote was, other people were involved in this too, deep security experts and so forth. And it was apparent from those discussions that we couldn't be assured. And that was assured that the key would never get out. So the risk of what happens if it got out, we felt could be incredibly terrible for public safety. So yeah, I think it's as I said, in hindsight, it was the right decision, and I have always said that I think it was the right decision. So it's pretty good to just hear how other people were involved in actually shaping that, and wasn't just him being like, well, no, I don't think Apple should do it.
Yeah, he sort of went on to talk about all sorts of people that he kind of approached to get this real kind of group focused discussion to lead to a decision. Because, I mean, must have been such an incredibly hard decision, because obviously with more and more sort of terrorist-based events that are televised and this heightened, sense of, World War III is going to happen and that sort of thing. That would have been such a tough call, and I'm really glad that they stuck firm with their decision. And as you said, now you got this with the Surface and that, and the universal key sort of coming out, showing the actual how someone could actually get in. They definitely went with the right decision there. I thought they asked him about admitting mistakes, and he off the bat just says Maps was a mistake, not overall, just to launch it in how it was and at the time that they did. And then he sort of counteracted that, saying Maps is now one of the things they're most proud of. And it goes to show that, I've sort of seen the stats of a large percentage of more, iOS users and stuff use Apple Maps over, other providers like Google Maps and that sort of thing. And I've always found it to be quite helpful, and in many cases I've found Apple Maps to perform better than Google Maps. I used to use Google Maps all the time prior to that. But yeah, it is good how they could turn such a because I remember when the whole Maps thing did happen, obviously Scott Forstall got ousted and that type of thing. It was such a sort of controversy in that.
I think that was so good for Apple in the long run that it's actually good that they ended up having that failure and getting rid of Scott.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that they didn't just go, it's the whole thing's tainted, we're just going to scrap it. They sort of went with it, enhanced it, realised where they went wrong. And now, as I say, I don't really have any issues with it, and it runs well. So,
in a couple of the other interviews that Apple execs have been doing, so Eddie Q and Craig Federighi also spoke about Maps recently, and they credited that for being the reason why iOS public betas now exist, and basically said that in Cupertino, where all of them were using it, Maps worked really well, and then all of a sudden they launched, and I've struggled to really believe how this happened. But they then launched it, and then had all these issues because not everyone lives in Cupertino.
It was.
So now they've essentially want millions of people to help them test on public betas, and they said that's something Steve would have never done, interestingly. But yes, so it's helped shape their strategy now, and for the better.
And they then go on to talk about Apple's acquisition of companies. So did you want to kind of let everyone know about that?
Yeah, so I think what I found most interesting about this was quite late on the interview that the interviewer asked for moments that stick out to him and reflecting on his tenure at Apple, and he mentions putting his time into 3 buckets: people, strategy, and execution. And sort of how this fits in with acquisitions of companies is there that he says they're always looking for companies that have really talented people and great intellectual property. And when they do find them, they acquire them. So they're not looking, they're not directly looking for companies that are just going to add to their bottom line, just absorbing like an advertising agency that will get them extra 10 million a year or whatever, for example, right? That's not what they sort of looking for. Or a standalone Uber. They would, if they were to buy something like Uber, it's to shape their strategy and to get the people that are doing it, and probably to use a bit of their self-driving things. So yeah, they're not very visible in acquiring a lot of companies, but they've said that they've acquired 15 to 20 companies a year for the last 4 years. So yeah, they definitely do it. It's just a bit quiet. And their biggest one was Beats for 3 billion, which I still don't think a lot of people know. Like, I know we know, as in we being the larger Apple following community, but the brands aren't that closely associated.
Yeah, because they still let Beats carry on as it has. They just sort of took it all on and sell it through the Apple Store. And I had someone at work come in with a pair of Beats headphones. I'm like, Apple owns Beats, and he sort of, would not have had any idea, because there's no real obvious way that you could tell. They didn't rename them, rebrand it really, or anything. They just done a few things with like color matching with Apple products and stuff.
Yeah.
But I that's what I like, is that there's something as large as Beats, as they didn't try and completely sort of overhaul it or anything. They sort of
it's kept its brand identity after the acquisition. Like, Beats is a lot more, I guess, cool, or sort of plays to a different market to typical Apple. So they haven't tried to change, like, they're a bit more edgy, I suppose, and a bit more out there. And Apple hasn't tried to really reel that in, which has been good.
Yeah. Gina then sort of proceeded to she wants to sort of poke Tim for information of where they're going next, and brought up the Apple Car as well. And he sort of danced around that a bit. But he did say that they are sort of focusing on and very interested in artificial intelligence and augmented reality. There are some sort of patents that have come out recently sort of aligning with this, the use of augmented reality for kind of like 3D space control and stuff, which is pretty cool. But I mean, I'm sure that they've kind of been interested in these type of areas for a while, because everyone's, say even with things like Pokemon Go and that augmented reality, it has existed for years prior, but now it's really, there's a push towards it, and there's more apps using it. And of course, with Siri, kind of goes hand in hand with artificial intelligence. So it'd be interesting to see where they go with that. So it's good that he didn't try and deny everything. He sort of said that they're interested in those areas, but didn't specify anything regarding types of products, and for obvious reasons. And he mentions he doesn't want to, give away anything to competitors. Yeah,
it is interesting though that he has, on the augmented reality side, he has been a little bit more forthcoming in admitting that it's an interesting space.
Yeah.
He had said that the wrist was previously, and had said that they wouldn't do anything on the face, when this was before wearables, then sort of saying that Google Glass was the wrong choice. But I find it interesting that he is a little bit more forthcoming with that. It kind of indicates to me that they have a really sound strategy that they're keen on.
Yeah.
More so than a product being close that they feel may or may not work. So it'll be interesting to see how far off they are on that. And he with the Apple Car stuff said, one of the quotes was, "But there will always be other things that will replace those things that are invisible." So essentially, if we haven't announced it yet, we could be really close to it, like AR, and not do anything because it's invisible, and there'll be something more interesting that we want to play in. So
yeah, the fact that he said he doesn't want to comment on something that they haven't announced was pretty funny. And then one of the other things saying, sort of talking about the scope of the company and that, and when he said, "I could fit every single one of our products we sell on this table." And
he said that in the Charlie Rose interview too.
Yeah. So obviously they don't sell the Apple Car. So that quote won't really apply, assuming Apple Car does exist. But that's expected to be at least another 5 years away. So he can use a different quote come then. So anyway, so overall it was a pretty cool interview. I enjoyed reading it, started watching kind of the video snippets and that. So I guess the idea is any more of these kind of interviews with people, leaders of certain areas in Apple and that type of thing. We'd like to bring it up. We're not going to sort of cover every single interview, but especially people say, like, as some of the listeners may know, Nick and I are really into Craig Federighi and that type of thing. And so these senior roles, they handle themselves well in interviews, and there's always something that you can take away from it, and there's always some quotes that are quite inspirational, and then ones that are quite funny as well. So yeah, we'll keep you up to date on that. Now, moving on to Rumour Mill. There's obviously a lot been happening with Rumour Mill because the September keynote is literally, it must be so close to being announced. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
So we're going to start off we're going to cover a few products that we have talked about previously, but these are just sort of some new kind of aspects or specs that may or may not be included. So the new MacBook Pro. Now, I'm really excited about this, and I am just saying off the bat, I'm going to get it.
You're going to get it no matter what?
Yes. I've never done this, but I sold my MacBook Pro.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in anticipation of the new one.
And if they don't announce it in this go, you've got your iMac, so you sort of covered. But
yeah, okay. First of all, it's expected to be announced in October, maybe released in late October, possibly November. So I'll hold off for an amount of time. But yeah, if it is true, I would just so want to get it that I kind of, whether I jump the gun or not, I don't know. But it sounds pretty cool to me.
What's the feature that's you are really like you've sold your computer now, so you're in for it. But what's the rumored feature that had you at that stage? Because you had the one with Force Touch, or had the one with Force Touch, so it was relatively new.
Yeah, it was only it came out. Yeah, so it came out March 2015. I'd got it in May, and basically it's still the current model. So it's not like there's been a spec bump or anything, but I think it's the idea of having a MacBook Pro that's more of a redesign. Because visually, the one I had looks awesome, but the design has remained consistent for, I don't know, a good several years. And with this one, they're talking about a Touch ID power button, which is pretty cool. Now, whether the power button is included in the OLED bar, so a touchscreen bar, which we've talked about previously, that sits above the function keys, that's the main bit. So those two parts in itself, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Larger trackpad, yeah, that's welcome. Not, the overall selling feature for me. They said it'll be thinner, but still flat and not wedge-shaped. So this kind of means that they're not going to shape it like the Retina MacBook and have to sacrifice specific internals.
I'm pleased about that. That is, I'm happy that they're not going to make everything wedge-shaped, because you kind of, as you say, sacrifice at least a little bit on battery or the processor you can have. So happy about that.
And they reckon just smaller pads on the bottom, kind of you'll overall have a thinner MacBook Pro. And I'd be very surprised if it's not, but USB-C. I hope they don't use combine the power port and the USB-C in one like they do. I think that they don't have to, because they're not trying to, squeeze it into a wedge shape.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically for me, just a Touch ID built into the MacBook, and just that customizable OLED bar. If it looks anything like the mock-ups, then as I said, I've never sold anything in anticipation of something that hasn't been announced, but yeah, it's the first time for everything. Yeah.
Do you reckon they'll have space grey and the likes, the sort of phone colours, or are they going to stick with the aluminium and black, or just aluminium?
I reckon they'll do colour options.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Is that partially appealing? One of the reasons?
Yeah, that is. I mean, I had a copper D-brand skin on the top of mine, which looks awesome, and I have no problem with the standard silver aluminium colour, but to get a space grey one, or maybe space black, I don't know. We still don't know whether space black exists or not in terms of anything other than the watch. But
I've been considering selling my MacBook Pro recently, or at least my partner's Air, and just keeping one laptop between the two of us, because I do almost know. We've mentioned before, I barely use it. I only really use it for one bit of software, but it's likely that I'll have that software on my work computer and actually won't need a home computer anymore. I've always used my iPad. So yeah, I might go the same route, but not actually replace it when the new one's launched.
Yeah. See, because for me, I was like, oh, well, do I sell it? Do I wait for an updated iPad Pro or something instead? But then it really proved to me when I got my MacBook Pro, I'm on the opposite end of you, as also previously mentioned. Upon getting the MacBook Pro, my use of the iPad decreased a fair bit. Yeah. And now that I sold it, I actually, there's so many times I'm like, oh, I'll just get out my laptop, which I don't have. Like, I'm like, oh, cool, I can sort of do a bit of work in front of the TV. No, I can't really. Yeah, I'm already missing it, but just hanging out for it. And what's cool about that is you've sort of, in terms of for the podcast, it's cool because you're kind of really into the iPads and I'm really into the MacBook Pros. So we both get something new that the other one doesn't have, and sort of give our own thoughts and that type of thing on it. So
yeah, speaking about the products that one has and the other one doesn't have, so I have the Apple Watch and you don't, and you're holding off for this version. So what can you expect from the next version?
Well, yeah, okay, so here's the thing. So I was like, oh, do I just get the Apple Watch 2, or do I kind of put what I, spend on that into this new MacBook Pro? And I know that the new Apple Watch is going to come out, and I'm going to be like, but yeah, I'm really sold on the MacBook Pro.
Oh, so it's unlikely that you're going to get the Apple Watch 2 now. Okay, so...
But all based on these rumors, which we're going to talk about, unless you want to let everyone know about that?
Yeah, so the one rumor is that they'll have... So they're kind of mentioning two versions, and it's a little bit murky, and sometimes these things aren't worded well because they can be a bit confusing in their translation. So they're mentioning that the current version will get a bit of a spec bump and better waterproofing, and then the other one will get that'll be the Apple Watch. So the one I just mentioned will be Apple Watch 1, like S kind of thing, and then there will be like an Apple Watch 2 where it's well, not even a 1S. It's kind of just Apple Watch, but with newer internals and not really calling it a different thing. And then Apple Watch 2 or 1S or whatever they name it, but that will have GPS, a barometer, and a better battery. So both of them apparently will have better waterproofing. I haven't had any issues with waterproofing. It's better than advertised anyway, and I've worn it in the ocean and regularly, in the swimming pool and sort of showering or whatever the case is. So I don't know if it needs better waterproofing, but maybe like a diving person may disagree with me. So I don't know. I guess there's always room for improvement. But the one thing that I'm keen on is the GPS. So you can currently go for a run without your phone and it's sort of calibrated, but the GPS will just help in. I like it actually being the route being plotted on a map, and then also the sort of altitude, so the barometer would help there. So yeah, I probably will get it. I'm most likely going to go for the sport model. So I guess when we say one of us will at least get it, I guess I'll be the one getting that one, and my partner will will hopefully also be getting one. She's most likely going to go stainless steel this time, so we'll do a bit of a swap there.
If the timing pans out for both of us, it'll be like Christmas before Christmas. Yeah, if you know what I mean. So we're both going to kind of have these new shiny, awesome Apple products to to get obsessed with. I think in terms of the waterproofing, it's more probably of a case of bringing it up to a level that they can really advertise it. So as you say, they're quite conservative. They're not going to fly out of the gate and say, oh, hey, this is the ultimate waterproof wearable, you know, and as I said, then something happens. So I think that, you know, as you said, for you haven't had any issues, but they probably just want to bring it to the level that, you know, deep sea divers or something could, you know,
absolutely,
really use it. And I definitely agree. The spec bump version, if there is going to be two versions, the spec bump version won't even be no name change or anything.
Yeah,
it'll just be, you know, just so it can run better. And obviously with WatchOS 3 coming out, you know, that those improvements are overall towards this Apple Watch running better anyway. Which is good news.
A rumor of a further price decrease, and that would be on the new model. So they already took it down from, was it $349? So it used to be, the entry level used to be $499 Australian, and now it's $429 Australian. And I think that they're saying that it will even be cheaper after this one. So that might correspond to actually being the stainless steel getting a price decrease. But I think that we're likely to see that rather than the sport being even further decreased.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, you know, we can both admit that with Apple products, you know that there's a premium on them, but we both enjoy them so much it's not overly an issue. But I do remember when the Apple Watch first came out, I was a little bit disappointed with the pricing. I was like, it was probably, to me, maybe 100 Australian dollars higher than I think it should be. So when they did that first price decrease, I thought this is good, and the fact that they're expected to do another one. But, you know, if they can overall improve the watches and then they have, you know, this other version that's even better with GPS, barometer and such, then that will sort of more justify that sort of higher pricing level, because they got to compete with, I mean, we know that, you know, Apple Watch is obviously a lot more advanced than, say, something like a Fitbit, but they're trying to really attract the people that use it for fitness and that sort of thing into that space. So to kind of bring the price down, I think it will sort of tip a lot of people over, if that's sort of fair to say.
Yeah, I agree. Certainly with the most recent one, I considered adding to the collection with the Sport, the Space Gray Sport, which I dutifully rather spent the money on extra bands. But yes, it'll be good. I don't think anyone would complain about it, you know, it being a little bit cheaper. So it will be good to see where they actually go. I do, you know, I kind of feel that the Sport is at an acceptable level. You know, if we want to call it Apple Premium, I don't know if I necessarily, so if we want to call it a bit of an Apple Premium, I think that that's still a reasonable level. So if we could, I think $650 would be a nice starting point for a sport band stainless steel model, about $150 extra. I think that's a reasonable difference. So hopefully they'll get there.
All right, so quickly, iPhone 7, it's looking like optical image stabilization will be standard in the 4.7 inch, which is awesome news, because I was always, that little bit jealous of the Plus having that. But the big one that's kind of flown out of nowhere is we're expecting 3 models of iPad Pros, whether they're all called Pros, I'm not sure, in 2017. So a rumor of your 9.7 inch, the 12.9 inch, and a new 10.5 inch size, like a halfway point, sort of incremental difference almost. Now they're saying that the 10.5 and 12.9 will run on an A10X chip, with the A10 chip being the sort of sibling version in the iPhone 7, and then the 9.7 will become the new low-cost option with a A9X chip in it, which is the current one. So kind of where does this leave iPad Air, which I've previously mentioned? I think they're just going to cut the whole Air thing? And will they rename 9.7 Pro to just iPad? And then furthermore, there's the idea of a flexible OLED iPad for 2018. But they're not talking about the whole iPad being flexible, just more of a curved screen design. But in terms of these 3 ones for 2017, what do you think about this 10.5 inch size?
It sounds pretty interesting. Having used the 12.9 for quite a while, I became quite accustomed to the large one. So, I probably would find myself trying out the 10.5 when it's released. And then I'm actually really excited to see where they go with the flexible OLED display for 2018. So I don't want to call too early whether I'm a fan or not of the Samsung's Edge devices, but I can see it being pretty interesting, that sort of technology on an iPad. I'd be interested to see where they go with that, and I'm likely to probably get both.
Because technically they already use it with the Apple Watch, like a curved.
Yeah, absolutely, or at least the glass is curved.
So the glass is curved. Yeah, but I think it was more just the idea of I kind of thought just this 10.5. I just never even thought of, because if you compare the 9.7 to the Mini, that's quite a difference, and then 9.7 to 12.9 is quite a difference. So it's almost sort of looking like they're going to treat the 9.7 as a replacement for the Mini. Do you? I'm not.
I don't know if 0.8 inches is enough to really differentiate like a Mini and a normal size, or even if they don't go with that naming, I still don't see, like, they kind of seem too close to me in size.
Yeah.
I wonder if they might actually just go like, so when they say 9.7 inch low cost option, the same way we have the iPad Air 2 now as a cheaper option to the iPad Pro 9.7, I might go out on a limb here and completely just come with a theory, which is just say 10.5 inch coming 2018 with a flexible OLED display, being the extra little bits are just the edges of the display, and the overall size would be similar to the 9.7 inch, and then keeping around the previous 9.7 inches as sort of the older models that are in the lower tier. I think could happen like that, where you gain extra screen size by having that curved edge.
Yeah, because iPads have always had the bezels on them. They decreased the ones left and right when Air came out. So that is an interesting idea. It sort of becomes 10.5 by utilizing curved screen or more of the actual physical real estate there.
That's in no way confirmed or rumored elsewhere. I'm just kind of thinking about that one in a way that I hope it will be implemented. So hopefully it comes through like that.
Yeah, I can almost, in a way, just see maybe even eventually the 9.7 just not existing anymore. Like 10.5 just becoming the new 9.7. So they have Mini 10.5 and 12.9. I don't know. Yeah, could be. Anyway, so these three sort of iPad Pro rumors, it's only just come out. We'll sort of further discuss it in future episodes, but just let us know what you think. Would you want a 10.5 inch iPad? Yeah, I guess I'd have to physically hold one to really know the impact that it would have. Okay, so moving on to Deal Down Under. Now, Apple has responded to Commonwealth, NAB, and Westpac requesting access to the NFC chip. So the actual quotes are, Apple upholds very high security standards for our customers when they use Apple devices to make payments. So this is in a statement to the ACCC. Providing simple access to the NFC antenna by banking applications would fundamentally diminish the high level of security Apple aims to have on our devices. So this is a similar sort of thing with, just Apple's high level of security, and that's the type of thing they take, especially as we're talking about the whole thing with the FBI and unlocking the iPhone. So they then went on to say, unfortunately, and based on their limited understanding of the offering, the banks perceive Apple Pay as a competitive threat. These banks want to maintain complete control over their customers. The present application is only the latest tactic employed by these competing banks to blunt Apple's entry into the Australian market. So, yeah, I mean, we mentioned this in the last episode, and we just think, yeah, they just got to get on board. They'll soon realise how much they're missing out by trying to fight this. So the next part that came straight after this is that these three banks have actually officially been denied permission to collectively negotiate with Apple over the Apple Pay terms. So this was an interim decision made by the ACCC, Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. Our final decision is expected in October, so this could at best result in widespread Apple Pay adoption for Australia in November. I mean, I don't know how much is involved for the banks to actually kind of roll it out or get on board with it. But yeah, this is something that's definitely been a big topic of interest for us. And yeah, I can feel that it's that close. So
yeah, hopefully they finally come on board and sort of get with it. Do you feel that there's a public pressure on them to do it? Like, I know that there's the ANZ, you know, they've got it, so there's the competitor pressure, but I still get the, oh, that's cool kind of reaction when I use it. So many people actually have an iPhone and don't even realize that they can do this. So,
well, I think that's sort of why ANZ have really come out with that advertising campaign, like Apple Pay now available, and they got the video, they got the advert with her splitting the payments, and they've got all the nice sort of photography of
they've done
someone
really
with the
well
Apple Watch or their phone, and so it's almost like educational as well.
Yeah,
like everyone thinks it's a brand new thing, but it's actually existed. All right, so we're kind of wrapping this up with some edible extras. Now, Parallels for Mac. Version 12 is now available to upgrade to or purchase. So for anyone that doesn't know, Parallels is a popular program that allows you to run Windows or other Intel-based operating systems on your Mac. So for example, you could run OS X Lion on a Mac that's running El Capitan, or Windows 10 or whatever you want. So before I get into the new features that are in version 12, Nick, have you ever used Parallels on Mac in the past?
Yeah, in the early days. So I moved over to Mac from PC in about 2008, and I was a little bit wary of going full OS X, and so I kind of had it as a training wheels experience for the first bit, but ended up really realizing that I don't need it. And yeah, I think it's useful if there's literally only a PC version of the software, but otherwise I'm not a huge proponent for it. Have you used it?
Yeah, mine was a similar thing. It was a transitional. When I got my first iMac, I used Parallels for a bit for web testing, with some Windows specific browsers. And there were some plugins I wanted to use that were only available on Windows. However, I sort of think that these days, with the popularity of Macs and the availability of programs, there isn't a big need to be running Windows. Everything's sort of available in both environments. In terms of how I've seen people using it, I've mostly seen them actually in sort of medical practices or educational departments. So that's where they've done like a bulk buy of iMacs. But then they're actually running Windows on those iMacs, like full screen. And this is, I would say, judging by the programs that they have to use. So a lot of things to do with, especially government software, is purely Windows based. So they kind of got these nice computer, but they're running Windows on it. So
mostly now I remote desktop into my work PC if I ever have to use do a bit of work that is PC only. I've only ever actually used PCs for work, so I do have that backup. And so I wouldn't need it
I've done the same
computer.
with the Microsoft Remote Desktop connection. Now, quickly, some features is that version 12 is Sierra compatible, said to have 25% better performance over the previous version. Now, the cool thing is that packed in with version 12 is a new standalone app called Parallels Toolbox. So this gives you a range of utilities that are sort of set out like one-click functions. And so how it kind of looks is it's sort of like, imagine a drop-down window coming from the menu bar icon with a grid of 12 icons, each being a different function. They got sort of ones involving recording and screen capture and just general things that you could do, but you might not remember the keyboard shortcuts for. So I think the cool thing about this though is that Parallels Toolbox is actually available as its own app and for pretty cheap. So if you guys, if anyone's interested in checking that out, just head to the Parallels site and there it is. So lastly, Rio is over. Now, what can the Olympians be expecting upon exiting the country?
So, they'll be getting, I think it was 2 Apple Watch bands, which is kind of getting around some sponsorship rules, I think. They weren't allowed to officially sponsor, well, they weren't official sponsors of the games, and so I think Samsung were, and they were giving out S7s, or they had sponsored Galaxy S7s, and so Apple's giving Apple Watch bands out at, was it at the Rio Apple store that they were doing that?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. To athletes.
Yeah, so there you go. If you, I know how much you wanted some bands, so just, I don't know, get Olympic level at rowing and there you go.
Just whip it out.
Just casually, world class and just.
It's pretty cool. I'm still impressed with the fact that they ever even made the South African band, but I'm still wearing. I have not taken off the nylon band that I bought. Well, I've taken it off, but I haven't taken the band off of my watch, just to be clear. And so, I'm actually a huge fan of it and would really like. I think the New Zealand one is probably the best designed. Might get a bit of flack for that, but
yeah, I know. I get it. It's understated. I like how they've done it with that little loop around it. So
just like the one color in the actual threading. Like the one thing I'm not entirely convinced about it, although I think it blends into the stainless steel part of my watch a bit better, is the sort of dual tone. But
just got to track down those Olympians and be like, so those bands they gave you.
Hopefully they have a whole lot of unused stock that they then decide to distribute in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen there's companies like Casetify have created their own versions, but I've seen those and they're just, some of them are a bit tacky. Did you have a look at those?
Yeah, I saw they were terrible. And they also didn't, have the South African version, which I wanted to get the Australian one and the South African one and the Kiwi one.
You just got to catch them all. So. All right, but that wraps up episode 10 or episode X, if we want to keep in with historical Apple naming. So, if anyone wants to follow us on Twitter, you can find me on @SwordToPen. That's SWORD2PEN. And yourself, Nick?
You can find me at Nick_Morris. That's NIC_Morris.
And of course, we have the official Apple Slice Twitter account @AppleSliceAU. Head over to Facebook, facebook.com/Apple Slice Podcast. Or you can find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast player by searching Apple Slice Podcast. So, there you go. Another jam-packed episode. I think we may tip an hour on this one. So, we'll be sure to keep you all informed and hopefully have some date announcements.
Yeah, they should be right on. I think
the event will be in the next episode.
Yeah, I think we'll be covering our reactions, which will be fun. So,
All right. So if anyone wants to know about the dates, I'll post it first thing on our Twitter and Facebook. Follow us, find out first. And, we'll have fresh opinions straight after the keynote, providing it's early September. And there you go. So thanks again, Nick, for chatting.
Chat to you soon. Cheers.
Yeah, catch you later.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.